Welcome back to MemoMap. Today our map is about the autonomic nervous system, which is one of an important reflex control of the internal environment. And today we are going to discuss first the reflex arc, the structure of the reflex arc. Then we are going to zoom out on the nervous system, which is divided into two parts, the CNS part and the peripheral nervous system part. And finally, we are going to discuss the autonomic nervous system, and we are going to discuss the structural organization, the neurotransmitter, the receptors, and the effect of the sympathetic and parasympathetic on different organs. Today, now let's start it with the reflex arc component. The reflex arc component is mainly the receptor, which is responsible for the sensation. It detects the change, heat, pain, stretch, whatever the stimuli. Then the afferent neuron, the sensory neuron, which carry the impulse from the receptor to the center, and then the integrating centers, which could be spinal cord or the brain, where the sensory neuron is connected with the motor neuron, and the signal is interpreted and the decision is made fast. Then we come to the efferent motor neuron, which carries the command or the impulse from the center to the effector or to the organ. And finally, we have the effector. This is the organ which is responsible for the performing of the actions. Let's talk about the pain reflex arc. First, we have touch. If you touch a heat, the pain receptors stimulated, the signal travels through the afferent, the spinal cord integrate, the efferent send the command, and the flexor muscle contract to withdraw your hand. And next, we are going to discuss the organization of the nervous system, which is classified into the central nervous system, which include the brain, the higher thinking center, the brainstem, which controls the vital function like the breathing and the cardiovascular, the cerebellum, which is responsible for the balance coordination, the thalamus, and the spinal cord. Then we have the peripheral nervous system, which connecting the body to the CNS, and it is divided into two major systems, the somatic nervous system, and it's either sensory, detecting the touch, pain, temperature from outside external environment, and the motor fibers that control the skeletal muscle, mostly voluntary. The second division is the autonomic nervous system, and it's divided to sympathetic, fight and flight, or parasympathetic, rest and digest. And this is responsible for maintaining the internal environment homeostasis through the sensing of the visceral internal environment and the response by giving an order either to smooth muscle, cardiac muscles, or the gland. Now let's talk in details about the autonomic ganglia. First, we are going to talk about the structural organization, while the somatic system is formed of one neuron. The autonomic nervous system has two neurons, the preganglionic neuron and postganglionic neuron, and both neurons meet at the ganglia. Let's compare the sympathetic and parasympathetic. While the sympathetic originating from the thoracolumbar and it has a short preganglia and a long postganglia, parasympathetic arise from the craniosacral and it has a long preganglia and a short postganglia. Now let's talk about the neurotransmitters. And here we have two types of neuron. Cholinergic neuron, which is secreting acetylcholine, and it is represent all the preganglion neuron, post-sympathetic, parasympathetic, all parasympathetic postganglia, and some of the sympathetic postganglia mainly to sweat gland and blood vessels of the skeleton's muscle. How is acetylcholine formed? By the reaction of choline with acetyl-CoA. How it's broken down? By the acetylcholine esterase. And now let's talk about the adrenergic neuron, which secretes the norepinephrine. And it's released from most of the sympathetic postganglion neuron, except the postganglion sympathetic to the sweat gland and the blood vessels of skeletal muscle. It's formed by the tyrosine, which converted to dopamine, and then norepinephrine, and then epinephrine. And it's breakdown by MAO and the COMT enzymes. Let's talk about the receptors. For the acetylcholine, we have two types of the receptor. The nicotinic receptor, which is ligand gated and channel and located mainly in the autonomic ganglia, and the muscarinic, which is J protein coupled, and it's located in the effector's organ. Regarding the receptor for noradrenaline, the adrenergic receptor, they are all G protein and they classified into alpha, alpha 1, 2, beta, beta 1, 2, and 3, and they are present in the target organs. Now let's talk about the effect of sympathetic and parasympathetic from above downward. For the eye, sympathetic causes pupil dilatation, while the parasympathetic pupil constriction. For the bronchi, it is dilated by the sympathetic, constricted by the parasympathetic. For the heart, the sympathetic causes increase in the heart rate and the contractility, while the parasympathetic causes a decreasing in the heart rate. For the blood vessel, mainly is sympathetic control, sympathetic activation, cause an vasoconstriction and increasing in the blood pressures. And now let's talk about the gastrointestinal tract and here and the bladders too. Here, remember, we need to talk about the wall and the sphincters. And remember that with sympathetic, uh, we are not allowed to go to the WC. So the wall is relaxed. That's to say the motility is decreased while the sphincter is contracted. And it is opposite totally with the parasympathetic. With the parasympathetic, the wall is contracted and the sphincter is relaxed. Also, the sympathetic increasing the blood glucose since it is a catabolic, while the parasympathetic is anabolic. At the end, remember that the sympathetic is responsible for all what we can see in the fight and the flight. That's the end of our memo map for today. Let's zoom out and see the whole picture. We talked about the autonomic nervous system, the structure, organization, that the efferent autonomic is divided to preganglia and postganglia, and the difference between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Then we talked about the neurotransmitter, the acetylcholine released from the cholinergic, and the norepinephrine released from the adrenergic. Then we talked about the receptors, the acetylcholine, the two main receptor, muscarinic, nicotinic, while for the noradrenaline, the two main receptor are the alpha and beta. Then we discussed the organs effect, and also we talked about the reflex arc component, which are the receptors, the afferents, the centers, the efferent, and the effectors. And also we talked about the structure of nervous system, which is divided into the center and the peripheral, and the peripheral is divided mainly to the somatic and the autonomic. That's your memory map for today. See you next one.